And welcome to a special focus edition of the OBX Wave Report, where we focus on the climate science and what is going on in the climate system now. This has a direct link to the health of our coastlines, a direct link to sea level rise, and a direct link to the intensity of storms, particularly storms in this case over the ocean. And what I want to talk about now is something that is going on right now in the climate system that climate scientists are touching on as a matter of concern. And what we are observing right now is that global ocean surface temperatures are at record highs. These record highs are happening in a time when we are not seeing an El Nino. And why is this a concern? Well, I'm just going to read this quote from Dr. Robert Rohde. Ocean average temperatures are currently the warmest ever observed. It is hard not to look at this and be a bit concerned. The previous record came during the big El Nino in 2016. While an El Nino is likely to develop later this year, we don't have one right now. So it's worth noting that previous global ocean temperature records occurred during El Nino. We don't have an El Nino now, El Nino being the periodic warming of the equatorial Pacific that spikes ocean surface temperatures as part of a natural variability cycle between El Nino, which is the hot ocean state, and La Nina, which is the cool ocean state. Typically, under global warming driven by fossil fuels, we've had this period of increase in ocean temperatures along a you know a steady increase, like a diagonal increase. But the times when records have occurred have often been when there has been an El Nino, because El Nino creates a wave along the incline in the graph. What we're seeing now is record temperatures without the presence of El Nino, but El Nino is on the way. So what we may see in the ocean system is a pretty broad departure, a pretty broad spike from the trend line. And we'll just have to watch and see what happens. But what is likely to happen is that the oceans are going to continue to get warmer as El Nino progresses. So we're going to get more and more into that record hot ocean range. And then that heat at the ocean surface will telegraph into the atmosphere, and we will likely see global surface temperature records over the entire surface of the Earth sometime between 2023 and 2024, with the most likely, according to what the scientists are saying, being 2024 for a new global temperature record. And I'm going to get into some of the statements by Gavin Schmidt as it's been highlighted in Axios. But this post by Robert Rohde, Dr. Robert Rohde, also retweeted by Gavin Schmidt, who is the a climate scientist and the head of NASA GISS. All right, so let's get into some of the observations. I do want to show you that this warm pool of water that is developing in the eastern equatorial Pacific, this is a telltale sign of the start of an El Nino. We're not in El Nino now, but that warm water is pooling up there in the eastern equatorial Pacific. And right now it's showing temperatures in the range of about 9 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And this pool of warm water is projected to extend outward into the equatorial Pacific and blanket most of the equatorial Pacific. And this will have an impact on the atmosphere. It'll dump more heat into the atmosphere and likely ultimately lead to new record global temperatures. But what I did want to do is show you the whole ocean system and in the anomaly range. And we've got very broad areas of much warmer than normal ocean surface temperatures. It's just kind of all over the place, where we've got warmer than normal temperatures in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. We've got warmer than normal temperatures in the Southern Ocean here. We've got warmer than normal temperatures in the Southern Atlantic Ocean and the North Atlantic Ocean. And we've got warmer than normal temperatures in the Arctic Ocean. It's just everywhere. Ocean water temperatures are much warmer than normal to warmer than normal in most places. There are some isolated cooler spots, but for the most part, the global ocean system is looking like a big warm pool. And I don't know, in the way back, I did some reporting on the hot blob out here in the Pacific. Well, we've got that too. um, the whole ocean system is pretty much looking like a hot blob, and that's concerning from a climate standpoint, particularly as we're sitting on the cusp of an El Nino event. And let's dig into some of the science on the projected El Nino event. I'm going to show you, this is a equatorial ocean's temperature anomaly for depth, showing where the waters are warmer than normal at depth and where they are starting to contact the surface. And what we tend to get with an El Nino is there's this pooling of warm water in the equatorial Pacific in the west, in the western region of the equatorial Pacific near the Philippines. And that water, that warm water gets shunted down into, um, it looks like a 100 to 200-meter depth, and then it telegraphs across the ocean under the water and then begins to surface in the eastern equatorial Pacific. And this is called it's called a Kelvin wave. It's a transport of heat through the ocean system, and it starts to surface in the eastern equatorial Pacific at the start of an El Nino. And we can see that right now with much warmer than normal temperatures near the surface at 5 degrees Celsius or above starting to pop up over the eastern equatorial Pacific. This is a telltale sign of the start of an El Nino when you get that Kelvin wave moving across the equatorial Pacific below the water. It just kind of dives below the water and then it pops up. It's kind of like a big movement of heat in the ocean system. And we've got at the surface, you can see the changes in the ocean surface temperature over recent weeks. And I did want to show you the tendency for El Nino to be predicted in the NOAA climate forecasts. And all right, let's see, let's make sure, I want to get this up to date, make sure this is up to date here. I'm going to have to go through some slides just to make sure, but I did want to show you the predicted chances for El Nino later this year. And it looks like by June, July, and August, we've got about an even chance of El Nino or ENSO neutral conditions. And then as we get into August, the predictions tip the scales um, to El Nino. And it looks like the chances of El Nino rise as we get into late summer and early fall of 2023. And so with El Nino likely on the way, we are likely to see global temperatures, global surface temperatures start to get into near record ranges and then cross into new record ranges. And before I get into that, though, I do want to talk about how El Nino might interact with the hurricane season in the North Atlantic. And it is worth noting that El Nino does tend to tamp down cyclone formation in the North Atlantic by aiding the production of wind shear. And wind shear can chop tropical cyclones apart. The two main factors when it comes to tropical, well, the main factors, not just two main factors, the main factors in tropical cyclone development are some instability to help the cyclones form, the warm water at the ocean surface, which provides fuel for tropical cyclones. And then the last factor is that the atmosphere comes into play where there is less wind shear that tends to tear these storms apart. El Nino increases the amount of wind shear in the North Atlantic. And so that tends to be a factor against hurricane formation. But we've got this other factor pushing against that, and that is much warmer than normal ocean surface temperatures in the North Atlantic. So right now, according to the major storm prediction monitors, tropical storm risk and AccuWeather, the hurricane season for 2023 is expected to be near normal to slightly above normal, despite the fact that an El Nino looks like it's forming with tropical storm risk predicting between 12 or no, around 12 named storms for 2023, the summer of 2023, and AccuWeather predicting between 11 and 15 named storms. This is on the high side of normal, um, with about 11 named storms being in the average. Um, and so it doesn't really look like El Nino is going to put a major damper on the hurricane season for the North Atlantic, namely because the ocean surface temperatures are so warm. So we might get some more wind shear, but because the added fuel at the ocean surface, there's more likelihood for storms to form. And and so that is a concern as well when it comes to ocean surface temperatures, and that also has a climate change link. Now let's get into where 2023 is expected to go as far as global temperatures are concerned. And our main expert that I like to follow in this is Gavin Schmidt over at Climate of Gavin. He's also head of NASA GISS. And he is showing that with 2023 um, and a projected El Nino, it looks like 2023 is generally tracking toward around third hottest on record, although according to some of Gavin's statements that I'm going to show here from like a quote in Axios, there's a 15% chance at present that 2023 will be the hottest year on record. And so though 2023 may be the hottest year on record, given record ocean surface temperatures and an El Nino on the way, generally climate scientists appear to be looking to 2024 as the most likely year for a new global temperature record. And I do want to show you where we are at present as far as global surface temperature anomalies in the max range. And right now it looks like we are the previous record was in 2016 at around 1.22 degrees Celsius above the 1880 to 1889 average. And um, so a new temperature record will get us closer to likely the 1.3 degrees Celsius range at the top of the range and push us more in the 1.2 degrees Celsius warming range, possibly in between 1.2 and 1.3 degrees Celsius when it comes to overall global averages, represent like the 20 years smoothing represented by the red line. So once again, trouble on the way for the climate system, mainly driven by fossil fuel burning or driven by fossil fuel burning. And then we are seeing the natural variability features come into play with El Nino giving us that global periodic spike. All right, so let's I just do want to share this quote from Axios for Gavin Schmidt's statement here. And according to this quote from Gavin Schmidt is, I forecast about a 15% possibility of a new record in 2023. And if we are in an El Nino by the end of 2023, an almost certainty of a new record in 2024. Um, so this is what's going down. We have record global ocean temperatures right now. We have an El Nino that is likely on the way, and that if the El Nino does show up, we are likely to have new record global temperatures in the between 2023 and 2024. And just to be crystal clear, the entire process that we are observing now in climate science is driven by fossil fuel burning. So thank you for joining me for this special focus session of the OBX Wave Report, where we talk global temperatures and the possibility of a new global temperature record. This has a direct impact on us at the coastline. Global temperatures directly, global temperature increases directly result in more glaciers melting, more sea level rise, and more powerful and intense storms that threaten those of us who live